You know how when you meet someone for the first time, sometimes something just clicks and you're not exactly sure what it is, but you know that you have come across someone super special. That happened just about a year ago for me when I met today's guest on Real RAD Women. When I came across Jan Janzen, I knew that she had traveled extensively and that she and I shared a background in sales, and that was about it. I had no idea what a truly real rad woman Jan Jansen really is, and that is why I am so excited to bring her to today's show. Just imagine being dropped in a strange land where you don't seem to understand anything because it's almost counterintuitive to everything you'd been taught. The concept of holidays, giving gifts, and even going to the doctor is all completely foreign to you, and it's something you have to learn about. Well, that's what happened to Jan Jansen when she moved from being raised in what she calls a cult to suddenly finding herself in a completely different world that she had to learn how to navigate. On top of that, shortly after migrating outside into this whole new world, Jan found herself divorced, single with no income, with no friends, and no place to live. Jan is a true example of grit, of perseverance, and of the prosperity that comes through your true self-awareness. She is the embodiment of attitude is everything. And I hope that you enjoy listening to Jan share her story as much as I enjoy speaking with her. Enjoy today's episode of Real Rad Women featuring Jan Jansen of Sales Queens International. I am so thrilled and so excited. I have been waiting since this interview got scheduled to talk to you. Welcome, Jan Jansen, to Real Rad Women. I'm so happy to see your face.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Melissa. This is exciting. I'm so proud of you, what you've done here. It's good.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, when we met about a year ago, I was having this sort of question of how do I show up? Where is the space of helping people in the business that I do with my coaching and my guidance? And when I really landed on that point that is such a point of passion for me, women who have been divorced, reinventing, rebuilding their lives, you have such an incredible story about just reinvention at its core. And when I say a story, because you are an individual, but you have so many stories that consist of complete reinvention. And you came to mind immediately as the beacon of the kind of woman that I would love to feature to this community, because your story it hits so many different points that women who are feeling stuck, who are struggling in the circumstances that they're in, I think that you're such an inspiration because of the many different ways that you have found to reinvent and find yourself where you are right now. So,
well, hopefully I will be a huge inspiration to your audience today.
I personally find you inspirational, Jan. So,
well, we know that's good. Okay, super.
So before we even get to where you are now, we'll get to that sort of down the line. I would love to hear your background and talk about really how you started, if that's where you want to start, how you came into your first iteration of changing your life and reinventing yourself when something really rattled you.
I'd have to start actually before I was born, which is kind of a funny little place to start. But my parents became Jehovah's Witnesses just before I was born. So I was actually born into a cult. Unlike my other brothers, my other sisters and my brother. So it was a very unusual upbringing because my parents were brand new Jehovah's Witnesses. My mom actually had a nervous breakdown after my birth and gave me away for 6 months. And they called me the mistake for the first 6 years of my life, because for them, coming into this Jehovah's Witness belief that the world was coming to an end, Armageddon was just around the corner, you can appreciate that having a baby at 39 years of age, almost 60 years ago, was, cataclysmic, right? And so they introduced me as the mistake. But, I grew up in that environment, and it was a really interesting training ground. Let's put it that way. By the time I was 6, I was going from door to door, offering watchtowers and awakes for 5 cents each, on my own. I learned to start off by ringing doorbells and things like that. My public speaking training started when I was 8. And I was a very, 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 very good Jehovah's Witness, because I was the only one out of all the kids that had actually been raised in the faith, right? And so, whereas my sisters and my brother were very resentful that their friends and the holidays and Christmas and all these things had been taken away from them, like completely, eliminated at a tough time in their life. Like they were teenagers. Wow. Then for me, it was just normal. So I never knew any of that kind of pre-Jehovah's Witness life, right? So in a way, it was a blessing because I didn't have anything to compare it to. And on the other hand, it was a real curse because I didn't realize I was being brainwashed this whole time. So by the time I was 17, I was not allowed to go to any post-secondary education. It didn't matter how brilliant I was. It was absolutely forbidden. I got on a bus at 17 and a half from Vancouver, and I traveled by myself across the country to Montreal, had rented an apartment, and I went to work to support myself part-time. And the whole reason was because I was fluent in French, and there was a huge need for Jehovah's Witnesses in the Montreal, Quebec area.
Oh, okay.
So that was the whole idea, that I would be able to, do this ministry in French. And I did. And then I, ended up leaving, and I traveled a little bit. And then I was married by the time I was 20, because as a Jehovah's Witness, their moral standards are very, very high. So you tend to have a lot of really early marriages. And so I was, married to a man who was also obviously a Jehovah's Witness. And we were, supposed to live happily ever after in a paradise earth. And that was really our firm
belief. Until it comes to an end. Until
it came to an abrupt end, when literally it was about 1997, we started to doubt the faith and really what we were doing. And we had just spent 4 years of our life as missionaries in Ecuador. We had taken our retirement savings. We had, decided that we were probably never going to come back from Ecuador because Armageddon would be here. And we went and spent all of our money in Ecuador. Came back, I was very, very sick, and I started to see issues. And by the time 1999 came along, we were ready to escape. And so we did. We planned our escape from the cult, and we did, which means we lost all of our friends, all of our family, and an entire way of life, which was the only life both of us had known.
Did you have any existence, any contact with people really outside of the community of Jehovah's Witnesses at all?
No.
Wow.
No, I did, because at the time I had a business in the automotive industry. So I had clients. Okay. I had my dealerships, and I knew the people there, but I had never ever made a friend really outside of the Jehovah's Witnesses. So we escaped. And then 9 months later, my husband said to me, "I don't want to be married to you anymore." And of course, because we had no structure now, this was all kind of a free flow thing. We were navigating together. And all of a sudden I was alone. And 3 months later, so literally a year to the month that we had escaped the Jehovah's Witnesses, he left me. And then 3 months later, my biggest customer, which was Ford Canada, said, literally sent me a fax and said, "We are," yeah, I know, that tells you how old it, right?
Fax machine, so fun.
Fax machine. I got a fax that morning.
Message, yeah. The way to do the way to break up with someone back then was via fax, not text.
Was via fax. And they said, "We've removed your program out of our program." And literally, that was it. I had a fabulous 6-figure income in the automotive industry, and that was now taken away from me. And so within a very short period of time, I had not only lost my friends and family, because none of them were allowed to talk to me anymore. I had now lost my husband. I now had lost my income. And within about 2 years of that, I was literally homeless and almost bankrupt. It was an interesting story, that's for
Wow.
sure.
So,
So I went from being happily married, living in a beautiful home, literally with an ocean view and a forest behind me, to I was, staying at a friend's office at night. Yeah.
wow. And did you, when all of that was building up, in hindsight now, did you have any kind of indications? Did you have any feeling, or was this just abrupt?
It was so abrupt because when you are married as a Jehovah's Witness, you're married forever, right? There's only one grounds for divorce, which is adultery. And so you don't kind of think about your husband leaving you. You just stick it out. It's like
There's
through
no
thick or thin.
questioning. You
There
don't
was no
question
question.
it. Yeah.
None. So I had no idea. Now looking back, I can see that there were clues that he was involved with someone else. But now at that time, I was so naive. And, there was so much stuff that was new and being thrown at me. I mean, people would say to me, so what's your astrological sign? And I go, because that was such a bad thing, right?
Right.
Or like, what do I do with my no blood card? Or, I mean, so much stuff that I had to navigate that, my husband having an affair on me was like the last thing that I was thinking about, like seriously, the last thing.
You're just dealing with going to a doctor and getting over so much of that buildup of what you've been taught your entire life.
It's huge.
Wow.
It was huge.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just so many basic things. Like, seriously, I remember going to my very first Christmas thing. And
what's that? Christmas.
And I showed up at my girlfriend, I now made a friend, and she invited me for Christmas because she felt sorry for me. And so I bought presents and I had wrapped them, but she said to me, well, how do I know who these are for? And I said, I don't know. How would you know who they were for? And she said, well, we have name tags. And I said, well, what's a name tag? Like,
Wow.
I want to cry when I say this, Melissa, because it was such basic stuff. Like my first birthday party wasn't until I was 40, and they brought out the cake and I blew out the candles. And then people said, well, you were supposed to like wait till we finish singing and everything. And then you blow out the candles and you make a wish. I go, oh, I didn't know that. Like I didn't know so much stuff. Right.
It's like a movie. I mean, it's like when you wake up from that
cult.
Encino Man, you wake. Wow.
So
Wow.
it was such a tough time right from the get-go because we were having to reestablish completely our different set of values, a different set of beliefs, like who am I? I mean, self-identity was, and of course, when you're in a cult, it's all brainwashing and you're very much meant to follow the rules and you don't ask questions. And especially as a woman, you don't ask questions. And so it was very challenging to be dealing with all of that. So no, the whole thing with my husband was a complete shock.
Wow. So then, Jan, what do you do? I mean, you are dealing with the loss of your husband in your life and this life that you were now kind of working to rebuild together since you left the loss of the community that you had spent your entire life in. The financial end, I mean, it was the trifecta. And what kind of foundation did you have within yourself? How were you able to, first of all, figure out with all of this happening, what the hell you're supposed to do?
Well, it wasn't easy. I mean, wasn't easy because, there were so many unknowns, and it wasn't even that they were just unknown because I hadn't done them, but they were unknowns because I didn't even know about them.
You didn't know they existed.
I didn't even know they existed. So before he actually left, we had got involved with personal development, which again was a huge thing. I mean, I'd never heard of Wayne Dyer. I had never heard of any of those people. I could tell you, I think you want to know about the Apostle Paul or, Queen Esther, but I mean, I didn't have a clue about, what was happening because we weren't allowed to read really books outside of our organization.
The power of now, what?
Yeah. The power of now, like forget it, just none of that. So we ended up doing, some of that personal development work with actually Harv Eker and out in Vancouver. And my husband left just before we attended the warrior camp. So, I walked on fire and I rappelled off of cliffs thinking that there had to be some breakthrough. And obviously there was, but it was still a real challenge because I now didn't have God, Jehovah God, for the Jehovah's Witnesses had been my my source had been my strength. It had been everything, right? And I was going to be saved. And if I was a good person and I did everything that I was supposed to do, I was going to be saved. I was going to be one of the privileged ones that would be saved. And now all of a sudden, like, I don't know, is there a God? I don't know. Like, I don't know what there is. I mean, it was such a shattering of that foundation, right? And so I tell you, those years I think were the most challenging because I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything to hang on to. I only had myself. And I remember I ended up living in a cabin with rats, literally the size of small kittens, running up and down the walls. I had no insulation in this cabin, and Vancouver had a brutally cold winter, which is really unusual. And I just had a wood stove. And I woke up one morning and my toilet water was frozen. My fridge door was frozen shut. I was, trying to run a business because that's all I knew. I knew how to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know how to be anything else. I've been an entrepreneur since I was, 19 years of age. And so I was trying to run a business. I was broke. I, was living with these rats, which terrified me. And this woman phoned me one day and she said, you really need to surrender to God. And I'm just like, I really wanted just to tell her where to get off. Like, I really remember the pretty nasty words going through.
Really what you're going to tell me right now?
And she said, you really need to surrender because, you need to let go of the fact that you think that you can do this on your own because it isn't working. And this woman had never spoken to me before. That was her first conversation with me. She's now one of my dearest friends. But in the moment, it was really hard to hear because I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And even though I had done a ton of, I actually had studied with religious science for 2 years and had become a non-denominational minister through all of this, I still did not really have that kind of relationship. It was kind of head knowledge, but it hadn't really sunk into a heart knowledge thing. So I had studied for 2 years a very different religious belief system than the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, they were like diametrically
opposed. Was it super attractive to you? Like, let's go on the far opposite.
Oh, let's just go out. I mean, it was pretty far out there, right? And then, I graduated. I could have become a minister, and I decided to become a non-denominational minister. At the same time, the other crazy thing I was doing at that exact time is my girlfriend had a stagette, and I had been invited to my very first stagette. I was 42 years old.
So for those of you out there who are not Canadian, a stagette is a bachelorette party.
A bachelorette party. Okay, there you
or
go.
A night if we're across the pond.
Right. Okay. So there you go. So yeah, there's still some words I don't know, even though my husband's American, right? But he doesn't talk about bachelorette parties. So that's but I had gone to this bachelorette party and it was a pole dancing party. Now, 2004 pole dancing was really hot.
That was hot. Yeah.
Yes. Oprah was pole dancing. Barbara Walters was pole dancing. Well, I get to this pole dancing party and I am freaked out. I mean, there's this thing that looks like a shower curtain rod in my, the middle of this living room. And I'm thinking, holy moly.
You're probably just about the stable.
It was attached. It was like, it was pressure to pressure fit to a stud in the ceiling.
Wow.
And that, I hated it. I couldn't wait to get out of that party. Right. So that night I go home, I go to bed. I'm staying up with a friend because I'm homeless at this point again. And I get downloaded an entire business plan for a pole dancing party business. And I'm like, you have got to be joking. Like right down to the colors, the logo, the name, the whole thing. And I got up in the morning and I thought, okay, I guess I'm doing a pole dancing business.
Okay, so wait a minute. You went to bed and you just kind of saw this.
It all came in. I had this whole dream thing. It just was complete.
At first, when you said downloaded, I thought, did you wake up and go to a computer and go on AOL? Or no, it's 2004. We had more than just AOL.
No, it was the craziest thing.
As much as you were resisting your experience, you saw something.
It was huge. And I knew it was. It was called A Pole Lot of Fun. And
that's awesome.
And so I hired a former stripper and to teach me how to pole dance.
And Jehovah's Witness knows lots of strippers.
Like crazy, right? Like seriously crazy. And I announced to the world that I was going to, start this pole dancing business. I ended up selling businesses in a box all across Canada. I was in media all across Canada. Some of the media dubbed me the pole dancing minister because I was a minister. I had, just been, ordained as a minister. And so here I was, it was just one of those crazy things that I did. This is probably the most controversial, crazy thing I've ever done. But you know what? It really got me out of myself, because pole dancing is a very sensual thing, but it's also a very empowering thing. And that's what it was all about. And I had to stand up for it because the media wanted to tear me down, right? They said, are you sure you're not taking off your clothes at those parties? And, are you sure there's not something sexual going on? And I had to defend myself, which really brought me back to having had to defend my beliefs as a Jehovah's Witness for all those years. And this was really the first time I had to defend something on, publicly in media. And it was really quite interesting. I did trade shows and stuff like that. It was a fascinating journey. And it was actually the sale of that business that ended up allowing me to move into a beautiful condo. I ended up creating a 6-figure income, and I've never looked back.
Oh.
So it was a huge lesson, because sometimes I know as women will go, well, that's not really what I had planned, or as an entrepreneur will think, well, that's not really where I was planning on going, or that's not really what my thing, I don't really know that I want to do that. But I think sometimes we're so stuck in our own head that we don't trust the process, right? That it's actually going to all unfold perfectly.
Yes.
Right.
So true. So true. And you had the benefit for yourself that you understood how to kind of do things for yourself, as having that entrepreneurial
absolutely
ability kind of ingrained in you, because that's a skill. Not everyone understands. It's something that I'm learning now. I've never been in any kind of an enterprising, situation in my life. And it is something that you really do have to step outside of what you are familiar with, because the
all the time. I mean, all the time. I've been an entrepreneur now for 40 years, and I still every day, for all the technology, because this isn't what I was, raised with. So all of the technology, the way that you're marketing, everything, you're always stepping out of your comfort zone as a Jehovah, as an entrepreneur. But I was trained to do that as a Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. So it became natural. You just always were out of your comfort zone. I mean, going up to someone's door and banging on the door, knowing you were the last person on earth they wanted to see. That's out of your comfort zone. I mean, I've been mobbed. I've had dogs sicked on me, hoses turned on me, doors slammed on my face. I had my vehicle stoned. So, stepping out of my comfort zone is not unusual. But this pole dancing, that was pretty close to it.
That's amazing. So I'm going to actually make sure, because I want to kind of get a little bit more, because I think stepping out of your comfort zone is this one of the single most important things. It's actually, like, of the 3 foundational things, you hit on 2 of them that I kind of roll into one when I'm working with people, and it's stepping out of the comfort zone. And it's really, it's letting go. It's allowing that stuff to unfold, because we push against the grain so much that we often stop ourselves from moving on and expanding. So what advice, when you were going through this whole process now, as you look back, if a woman is not an entrepreneur, does not have the understanding of how to create a business, but finds herself homeless in a cabin with rats and has maybe an idea or something that comes to her, what kind of advice could you give to just sort of help create the little fire to actually get out there and start taking the first steps to explore it?
I think the first thing I always tell people is, when you get an idea, and I do it still to this day, is you need to test that idea. There was a time, I would say maybe 25, 30 years ago, where if you had an idea, you just ran with it, right? There wasn't, market research was done by like big companies like, Colgate kind of thing. But certainly the little person they just decided, I think I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And off they went. And there was not enough competition so it didn't matter. You could do just about anything, right? But today you really need to know that you have a market. And so I always tell people, I don't create the course until it's sold. So as long as I'm a week ahead of my group, then that's all that matters, right? It's not like you prepare your whole idea. You talk to people, you find out if there is a market for it. You get on the phone. And so when I came back to, I traveled for 9 years, but when I came back to Canada, and then this year, or the end of last year, I decided I really wanted to get back into my own entrepreneurial thing. I run our supplement company for my husband and I, but I wanted my own thing again. And so I literally got on the phone. I learned how to messenger. I had no idea what messenger was. I learned how to messenger, and I just said, "Hey, I have a question around sales and I need 5 minutes of your time. Would you be willing to answer it?" And people said, "Yeah." So I would get on the phone or Zoom with the people for 5 minutes, and then I would say, "Okay, 5 minutes is up. Do you want to continue, or are you good?" And lots of times people said, "I'd love to continue to talk."
Sure.
But I found out
talking to
so much. Like I found out so much from people. And that was how my business was born. It wasn't just like I pulled an idea out of my head, even though I've got lots of them. I tested it. And that's, I think, a big mistake that people make, because they think, "Oh, I'll just run with it. It'll be okay." And you just don't know. You don't know until you talk to your market.
Yeah, that's such great advice. It's such great advice because, I mean, truly, when you are on your own creating something that you're putting out there, knowing what those people that you are thinking about want and being able to see the alignment in that is the difference between creating something
success and
or
failure,
spinning your
right?
wheels.
Absolutely. And I don't think today we have enough time, energy, or money to be wasting it, right? So you need to make sure. And I think one of the reasons that we women entrepreneurs, which is who I work with, don't do that tough part, which is that market research, is because they don't want to be disappointed. Like, what if it is a flop, right? Well, it's much better to find out that it's going to be a flop before you start it than it is after you've put 6 months or a year or 2 years into it. You've spent a lot of money. You've maybe even gone into debt, and you've really exhausted yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in every way. And now you have a disaster. So if it's going to be a flop, it's going to be a flop whether or not you do it from the beginning or at the end.
Right. It's our human psychology, just what we have been conditioned to protect ourselves from that disappointment. Yep. I was in corporate sales for 20 years. And when I was in it, when I was on the ground, and all the way up to when I was managing teams, I mean, the number one thing that I would see people do time and time again, that's so painful to watch when you see it, is the effort that you put in avoiding the no that is right in front of you. People, they won't ask the questions to actually deliver a yes, no answer. You'll, a lot of times you'll walk out of a meeting with no answer, which is kind of a no, but just to avoid that disappointment, it's like, no, it's going to hurt. No, it's going to be great, because then you can keep going and move on with that wonderful gift of that knowledge, because then you can find out why it's no, or at least you're not spinning your wheels trying to create something that's not there. No,
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Fantastic advice. So the pull out of fun sounded like it was a pull out of success for you, and that really got you.
It was, and it was a turning point, because I also realized, as I lived in that cabin with the rats, was that I really sensed that I had a gift of healing, which of course again freaked me out, because that was something that just was so taboo.
Yeah.
Right? So taboo with the Jehovah's Witnesses. But by the time I moved out of the cabin, it was so strong, Melissa. I couldn't ignore it anymore. And that same woman who had told me, you need to surrender, and just get down on your knees and say, "I give up," like I can't do this on my own. She came over and I said, "This is what I can do." And she said, "Well, you've got the gift of healing." And you might as well told me I had leprosy and cancer and, emphysema, and I was having a heart attack all at the same time. Like, really seriously, it was like, oh my God, are you serious? And I knew it, but it was accepting it and really owning it, because it was, again, that I thought I had dealt with all this stuff, like the Christmas and the birthdays and the Virgo thing and whatever, right? But all of a sudden there was like this thing smack in my face, which had just been so taboo. And that was a hard one. But you know what? I said, okay, well, if I can pole dance, I can do this. Right? So
Wow.
So that's what I did. I ended up, but I said, this was the deal. I said, okay, by this time I had people say I have a very radical relationship with God. I said, okay, God, here's the scoop. This is the deal. I will do what I am totally uncomfortable doing. And I know I will be good at it. There's no doubt about that, because I realized it was a gift and I knew it was going to be good. I said, but here's the deal. I am not going to deal with people's issues all day and get up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and be at a networking event to kind of promote my thing, or after a full day, be out at a networking event. So if you want me to do this work, then you send me the people and I'll do it. And so I never had a website. I never sent out an email. I did no networking. And my business was booked 6 weeks solid. It was booked out for 6 weeks solid. And I created a 6-figure income with it.
Just word of mouth.
All word of mouth.
And showing up, being you, and being, this is what I am, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. And this is the next chapter, right? This is the next chapter. And I did that it was 3 years that I did that. And then I wanted to travel, because of course I'd never got to do what most young people get to do. They don't get to go to university, they get to travel, and I never had. And I had done a lot of traveling with my parents and, as a married woman, but I had never really got to do that. Hey, this is where I just want to be. And so I packed up my business. I took it on the road at the end of 2007. And I ended up living out of 2 suitcases for 9 years and traveled the world.
Oh, that's incredible. That's so, and what I love so much as I'm sitting here listening to you is having the thought that you have to be this one thing. And when you set into it, this is forever. All right, well, I'm going to create this career, this opportunity for myself. And the word career is so funny, right? You are such a great example that you can do something and you can be super successful at it. And then if you're paying attention and you're letting things unfold, you'll see where you want to go next. And that's not, you don't have to be in this one thing, which I think is so freeing. And it's so much more, I think it enables your ability to kind of move into something you're super uncomfortable with, because hey, let's see what happens. This isn't like I'm chopping off a limb that I'm never going to get back.
Right. It's not a forever thing, right?
Right.
So I think why I can do that is I was obviously an avid reader, because as a Jehovah's Witness, you have to be, because you just have so much to read. But I became an incredible thirst for knowledge after I came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because now the whole world was open to me, not just the JW literature, right? Mm-hmm. So, we still have so many books around the house, and I probably read a book a week. And I am constantly, I just constantly bring in books. I just can't get enough knowledge. But one of the books that I absolutely loved was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And the quote in Atlas Shrugged that was, "What greater wealth is there than to own your life and to spend it on growing?" And that whole belief of owning my life, because I had never got to own my life. My life was owned by the Jehovah's Witnesses. My life was owned by my husband. My life was owned by, this very vindictive, vengeful God that I had been told to fear. And so I had never got to own my life. And once I owned my life and realized that that was the greatest wealth that I could possibly have. And so owning my life meant that I could decide that I wasn't going to do that forever, and that I could walk away, and that I didn't have to say I'm sorry or make excuses or feel bad or any of that stuff that I let people down. And so I have been a serial entrepreneur for most of my life, but I have, and I've built a 6-figure business and said, that's not really what I want to do anymore. And I have walked away.
That quote is so, I was actually searching for a quote earlier today to share with someone, just as I'm thinking of you kind of message. She's getting another one, because that is the perfect timing for that. It is owning your life is and being able to go back to ask those questions and pay attention and listen to what that means and what that is. And that's,
and then to realize that, we need money. And now my tagline is 6 figures is the new minimum wage. Because having traveled, I saw so much suffering, and I saw so much suffering of women and children and, the pets and, oh my goodness, right? That I realized that we needed to have the financial freedom. And I do believe that women will be the ones that change the world. And I think we need some serious, serious changing, right? But the thing is that when you really own who you are, then it's so much easier to make money, because people are far more attracted to someone who is really in touch with themselves and really owns their life and can communicate that. And either you like me or you don't. And that's okay, because you don't know, the whole world doesn't need to like me. And the whole world isn't going to like anybody. Right. And so that whole feeling of, well, what if people don't like me, or what if I'm rejected, or what people say no? I mean, I got over that as a Jehovah's Witness, but it's really been amplified since I've been on my own.
Oh, that's so true. Well, because it's so attractive because, first of all, you are attracting those that enjoy what you are about. And it's even more attractive because the light that shines from you being true to what you're about. There's no sort of, is she for real? I mean, there is no question showing up and hearing someone who speaks the truth that they are living, that they are owning in their life, is just, you want to be around that. Just, if nothing more, to understand how you can do that for yourself, if that's not how you're operating. So that's amazing. Tell us a little bit more, because we've talked about it, touched on it a few times. And I, especially as a, I won't say recovering, I'll say former sales chick. As a former sales queen, Jan, what are you doing now to help women? And I know you're doing two things, and I so much love kind of the two areas of passion, both what you're doing for your business and where your heart is, and where your heart is going with what you're doing to help women. Tell a little bit more about that.
Well, when I looked at the whole income issue, and when I came back from, traveling, and the man who's now my husband, we settled in Canada again. He's American, but his mom had been born in Canada. So it was super easy for him to get Canadian residency. We ended up deciding, out of all the places in the world, we decided to live where we have snow like 7 months of the year. We absolutely love it. It's kind of crazy. After being on all the beaches, people say you could have lived anywhere and this is where you live. But what we realized was the solitude. It was the quiet. The world is so noisy, and that we really just felt that we wanted a place that was quiet, that's our sanctuary. And so it really is. We live on 20 acres in the woods, and we absolutely love it. But I realized, and he was able to join me I traveled on my own for 4 years, and then he was able to join me in 2011. And then we traveled together until 2016, and we traveled in mostly underdeveloped countries. So like we lived in rural El Salvador for 4 years. We were in Vietnam, we were in the Philippines, we were in Belize, we were in Honduras, we were, all over in countries where there was a tremendous amount of suffering. And I came back. And when I decided to come back to work, I thought, how can I make the greatest impact on women's income, women entrepreneurs and their income? And I realized that their big thing was this sales conversation, right? It was like, yuck. And they called it icky and yucky and slimy and sleazy. And I learned a new word this week, smarmy, from someone.
Oh, smarmy.
So, that's a new one.
That's like a backhanded insult. It's like,
that's a really like smarmy. Yeah. I mean, it even sounds like, kind of repulsive, right? So I thought, if I could turn around that sales conversation for women, and they actually learned that it was something that was actually a beautiful, sacred, intimate conversation with somebody, that where you can be in service, you can do all the good things that women love to do, and it wasn't all that ickiness, then I could make a difference in women's income. And then one day I was on a Zoom call just like this, and we were having a conversation, and out of my mouth came, and 6 figures is the new minimum wage. And everybody kind of just stopped. And I had never heard this before. Like I hadn't thought about it. It just came flying out of my mouth. And I went, wow, that's kind of cool, right? And then I tried to test it out again. I tested it out with people, and they said, oh, I love that. Can I have it? I go, no, I'm trademarking it. So that was it.
No, you cannot have it. It's mine.
But I did. I did, because to me, 6 figures is really the new minimum wage. I mean, it's not if you live in rural El Salvador, but for, most women who are certainly your audience, they're living in a developed country. And we used to think that $5,000 a month cut it, but not when you look at all the things that we need in order to even run a business, right? All the tools that we need, all of that stuff. And you have to prepare for retirement. I mean, right now, 1/3 of Canadians do not have any money saved for retirement, which is pretty scary because I don't know, where the money is going to come from because the governments right now are just printing it like crazy, right? And
Right.
there's
Yeah.
nothing to
I think
back it.
where we are right now in the world with COVID, and I think that the doors have been blown off of so many of the things that we haven't really been thinking about as it relates to our finances, our financial security, what it really takes and what we can do, how we can secure and ensure those things, and particularly then take another layer and be a divorced woman and be in the situation where you at one point were either fully relying on someone else's income or had two incomes. And that completely changes. I mean, the whole system is
It's a scary thing because PayPal did a study here in Canada. And now this isn't the National Enquirer. This is like PayPal and a firm, okay, in Canada. And women in Canada, women entrepreneurs in Canada earn $68,000 less than a male entrepreneur. Now, that just horrifies me. I mean, I just want to cry because why? It's not that we're not smart. We actually outsell men. But because we usually don't charge enough for our services, we give a lot of stuff away. We discount. We're, always saying, "Oh, no, 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 it's too much. Don't worry. I'll throw this in as an extra.
Oh yeah, I want to help you. Let me give this to you.
Let me give this to you." So we outsell men, but we actually make a significant, $68,000. That's a lot of money, and so that was an alarming fact because it's hard enough to make a living on your, if there's two of you working, but now as a divorced woman and you have now got to take care of yourself. Oh my goodness. And if there's children involved. So I work with the money mindset to a large degree because that has to be right. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much sales training you have. If you haven't got the money mindset, and I also use my healing. I'll say to somebody, you know what, there is something that just, I can feel it. Like I can feel it in the pit of my stomach right now. I say, you know what, are you open? Can we just get rid of this, like whatever it is? And once I, tap in, I can find out what it is and we can let it go. Cause you need to move out of this mess that you're in from a mental point of view around money. Right. So there's all sorts of tools that I can use. It's not just about the logistics of a sales conversation, but it's about really building up the confidence and the money issues and all of that so that you can go make your six figures and more.
That's beautiful. And it's so true. I mean, the mindset mindset is such a foundational piece to anything. Right. And money is such an important element because the relationship that we have with money is so rooted in all of the other things that we may have been moving beyond, but somehow, some way, it seems really weird that the relationship money the baggage comes along with us as we travel through life, even if we can move some of that other baggage out of the way. And I think it's because it really has become, and now less of a taboo topic. I mean, hey, divorce used to be a taboo topic that no one talked about, and people wouldn't make eye contact with divorced women, on the street. They would just talk about her in their kitchens behind her back, right? So that's looking at where we are now and thinking about all these stigmas and all of these taboo topics that are very, very important to address in the understanding of moving into that better place and that new place that you are interested in going to. So I just so love I love your approach and how you, first of all, expand the understanding that women can have about their ability to do something that can create a financial independence for themselves, and how you empower them. I mean, it's phenomenal. How can people learn more about what you do if they're interested in being a sales queen that gets some enlightenment from the wonderful Janzen?
You know what? I think the first thing that people should do is just go to the 8moneyarchetypes.com website, do the assessment. It takes less than 10 minutes. And then book a 30-minute reading with me. It's an amazing assessment, uncannily accurate. and I'm a certified sacred money archetype coach. So I have been trained to look at your top 3, and then we can see exactly why you do the things that you do. It's fascinating. So, for example, a lot of women are nurturers, and that's a big thing, right? So you've got maybe, a nurturer, and then you may have, let's say, an accumulator. So you've got like, it can feel like you have a little devil on one shoulder that's going, okay, so give it away, lower the price, right? And you're hearing this voice and you're feeling it because it's you. It is the blueprint of your soul. This isn't like, oh, I think I'm going to change my outfit, or I'm going to change the color of my hair. This is it. This is in your DNA. And then on the other hand, on the little other shoulder, you have the little accumulator that's going, but you have rent due. You haven't got any savings. Like, what about this? And you have groceries to buy. And so you've got,
are you in like my head right now? Are you having conversations with both? Are you feeling in the pit of your stomach what you're
So literally it's like there's this cacophony of conflicting viewpoints, and you'll think, oh my, I'm crazy. I'm nuts. Like I just can't manage money. But what it is, because you don't know your archetypes. So what happens is that you have these voices. These are real. Right? These are real voices that you are hearing, because one is defending its total priority and the other one is defending its priority. And so you have to learn. And I work with the top 3. So then, you could have something like, let's say, a celebrity as the 3rd archetype, which is all about spending money. So now you're giving it away, you're spending money, and you have an accumulator in the middle that is totally freaked out because there's not enough money in the bank, and it needs to have money, and they're frugal, whereas a celebrity really thoroughly does enjoy a good life, right? They love spending money. They like looking good. So you can appreciate why there's oftentimes so much conflict. And people are in a business partner relationship or in a relationship. Oh my goodness, the conflict, because not only are you dealing with your own archetypes, but you're also dealing with either the business partner or your partner's relationships to money, and it creates chaos. So once we know where you're at, then we can look at, okay, so then how do we resolve the issues and still keep you in integrity with who you are?
Beautiful. That's once you know where you're at, and that's the first step, is just getting to the point of knowing where you're at. It's so awesome. So I love it. So it is, again, the 8 money archetypes.
So the number 8 moneyarchetypes.com.
Okay. Yeah. Number 8 money archetypes. Awesome.
And it'll take you less than 10 minutes to do the assessment. So it's not this great big, test that you're going to go through. It's less than 10 minutes. Answer the questions. So you just answer the questions, you'll get your results, and then just book the, and I get your results. Then you just book the consultation with me right there and then, and we just have a great reading.
Oh, I'm going to do it fun. And you'll get my results and you'll laugh because you'll be like, I knew it. it
first you know time. What? I don't actually, I just try to stay compliant. I don't influence at all. I just go, you just go do it. Just go do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Jan, I feel like we could talk forever and ever and ever, because I love your energy and your attitude, because something tells me that even at the lowest, most challenging points of your life, you have always shown up like this, with a certain effervescence and a certain vibrancy to how you approach things. Mm-hmm. And it is so refreshing and just wonderful to be around. And I so appreciate how you shared so openly the many, many hills and valleys to what your experience has been so far, because you are a reinvention queen for sure.
Oh, thank you. When you talked about reinvention, you said this is what you were going to do. I thought, wow, I hadn't really thought about having to reinvent myself. Like, it was a whole new concept that you brought into my world talking about this, right? It was, for the most part, so much of it was survival. Like, how do I survive through this? How do I get through this? How do I wake up to another day? But I think that if I was to say anything in closing, Melissa, I would say that you will survive. Right? You will survive and you will come out of it. And my quote really has kept me sane. And I've used it in so many ways. And it's not what I prefer, but I trust it's perfect. And that quote has literally, I mean, saved our life so many times, or kept us from disappointment, or kept me from falling apart and thinking, this is not what I wanted, and it's not what I prefer, but I trust it's perfect because I see that I'm the ant on the floor, right? And the ant doesn't have that bird's eye view, right? I'm just kind of going through my life and I've got a certain amount of perspective, but I don't have a world view. So when I get, guided or something happens, rather than moan and groan about it and think, oh, I, never get what I want and blah, 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 I go, wow, I'm excited to see why this has showed up and what's going to happen. So being in that state of excitement and anticipation of the good things, right, that are going to come my way, instead of feeling like my world has ended.
So true. That's an amazing perspective to have. It's what propels you and
Absolutely.
moving. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Moving on, moving forward. I love
Yeah.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. Jan, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Melissa. It was awesome.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Real RAD Women. Are you in the process of your own reinvention? Visit radnewlife.com to find out more about the resources and support you can receive to help amplify your progress. Find out where you are in your process and exactly what you need to do next to take the steps to move forward, and connect with a community that understands your experience and supports you. Again, visit radnewlife.com. And don't forget to tell your friends about this channel, and don't forget to subscribe.